بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Recite 3 Surah Al-Hamd for the blessed and broken heart of Imam al-Zaman. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah. أعظم الله لنا الآيات، أعظم الله لنا الأجر بمصابنا بأبي عبد الله Imam al-Rida alayhi السلام says إن يوم الحسين أقرح جفوننا وأسبل دموعنا وأذل عزيزنا. The day of Hussein bruised our eyes. Allahu Akbar. This is why Imam al-Zaman says لأندبنك صباحا ومساء ولا أبكين عليك بدل الدموع دما. I shall cry for you day and night, Ya Aba Abdullah. If Imam al-Zaman cries day and night every single day, imagine in what state he is today on the day of Ashura. Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, أين الطالب بدم المقتول بكربلاء. The day of Hussein, says Imam al-Rida, has bruised our eyes, broken our hearts. What else, Ya Ibn Rasulullah? Why? It humiliated us in a land of trial and tribulation. في أرض كرب وبلاء. These are the words of Imam al-Zaman. I'm going to read to you right now from Ziyaratul Nahiya. Assalamu ala al-shayb al-khadib. Assalamu ala al-khadd al-tarib. Assalamu ala al-badan al-salim. Assalamu ala al-thaghr al-maqru' bil-qadhib. Peace be upon the one whose sanctity was desecrated. Peace be upon the one whose blood was unjustly shed. Peace be upon the one who was bathed in the blood of his wounds. Peace be upon the one who tasted the spears raining down over him. Peace be upon the one surrounded by murderous mobs. Aywa Husseina. Peace be upon the one slaughtered in public. Peace be upon the one who was buried by strangers. Peace be upon the defender who had no helper. Peace be upon the beard which was dyed with blood. Peace be upon the cheek that was covered with dust. Peace be upon the butchered body. Peace be upon the front teeth that were beaten with a rod. Peace be upon the head raised upon a lance. This is the story of Hussein, but there is much that we haven't said and will never be able to say. With the dawn of the 10th of Muharram, Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, led his followers for the dawn prayer. He then wore his grandfather's armor and turban and put on his father's sword and stood to address his small band of followers. He began by praising Allah and His Prophet. He then declared to his followers, Inna Allah Ta'ala qad adhina fi qatli wa qatlikum fi hadha al-yawmi fa'alaykum bis-sabri wal-qital. Allah has willed that you and I shall be killed today, so be strong and steadfast. The Imam rode on his grandfather's horse and began preparing for war. As his companions mobilized for battle, the army of Umar ibn Sa'd encircled the tents of Hussein. Shimr attempted to approach the camp from behind, only to find a moat filled with fire blocking him. So he screamed, "O Hussein, you have hurried to the hellfire." Hussein replied, "You are more deserving of the hellfire." Muslim ibn Awsaja wanted to shoot an arrow in Shimr's direction, but Hussein stopped him, saying, "I hate to begin the one. I hate to be the one to begin the war." On the other side, Umar ibn Sa'd, the commander of the enemy's army, had come with no less than 30,000 troops, like an ocean of men. When Hussein saw their gathering, which resembled a mighty torrent, he raised his hands to the heavens and prayed to Allah. "O my Lord, you are my haven in every mishap, my hope in every predicament, my refuge and defender in every ordeal. How many a distress that weakens the heart, makes the enemy rejoice at the misfortune when I entrusted it to you and resorted to you out of preference over others. You did not let me down. and had driven away and eliminated all these distressing things. Umar ibn Sa'd, the commander of the enemy camp, then drew nearer to the camp of Hussein and ordered the bearer of the flag to move forward. He then took an arrow, placed it in his arch, and shot at Hussein's camp, saying, "Bear witness for me with the ruler that I was the first to shoot." The arrows then followed like rain, causing injuries to every single one of Hussein's camp. Imam Hussein then called on his followers, "قوموا رحمكم الله إلى الموت الذي لا بد منه. هذه السهام رسل القوم إليكم." Rise to the inevitable death. May God bestow His mercy upon you. These arrows are the messengers of these people to you. Hussein's men waged a fierce battle in defense of their leader. When the dust settled, "Ajarakumullah ya mu'mineen," 50 of them had lied dead on the sand. When Hussein saw the scene, he began pleading for help. "Ala hal min nasirin yansuruna, ala hal min mu'inin yu'inuna, ala hal min dhabbin yadhubbu an harami Rasulillah." When the women heard his plea, the sound of their wailing and sobbing were heard in the camp. One by one, the companions who were left in Hussein's camp came forward and asked for his blessings and permission to go fight, bidding him farewell. Then the companions proceeded to defend the son of the Messenger of Allah and were killed one after the other. Once all of the companions were killed, the family of Hussein then prepared for battle. The first to come forward was Ali Akbar, Hussein's eldest son. When Ali asked for his father's permission, tears began pouring out of Hussein's eyes. نظر إليه نظر آيس من وأرخى عينيه عليه السلام وبكى. He then prayed, "Allahumma ashhad ala ha'ula'i al-qawm فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك." O Allah, be witness against these people, for a young man has been forced to face them who has the closest resemblance to your Prophet in his nature and manners and his speech. Whenever we yearned for your messenger, we would look at his face. O Lord, deprive them from the riches of the land, divide them and bring your wrath upon them. He then turned to Umar ibn Sa'd and said, "وَيْلَكَ يَا عُمَرَ ibn Sa'd, قَطَعَ اللَّهُ رَحِمَكَ كَمَا قَطَعْتَ رَحِمِي." Woe unto you, may God sever your lineage just as you have severed mine. Ali Akbar entered the battlefield, killing dozens of troops while reciting the epic, "Ana Ali ibn al-Hussein ibn Ali, تالله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي، أضرب بالسيف أحامي عن أبي، ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي." I am Ali, son of Hussein, son of Ali. Wallah, we are by God closer to the Prophet. I shall defend my father. The unbearable thirst, the scorching sun, and the painful wounds of the sword soon forced Ali to retreat to his camp, asking his father for a drink. Hussein told him the pain would soon be over, saying, "It is only a matter of time before your grandfather quenches your thirst with his eternal cup." Ali al-Akbar went back, fighting with greater valor, It was as if his grandfather, Amirul Mu'mineen, was in the battlefield. Finally, the evil Murrat ibn Munqidh approached Ali al-Akbar and dealt a blow to Ali's head, causing him to fall on his horse. The blood began gushing from his sacred head and covered the horse's face. Ajarakumullah ya mu'mineen. His horse, not being able to see, led Ali al-Akbar toward the enemy camp. The troops then attacked him from all directions. Thousands began striking him with their swords, and they cut him into pieces. فقطعوه إربا إربا. أيوا حسينا ومظلوما وغريبا. Upon his death, Ali al-Akbar screamed so his father could hear him, Aba alayka minni salam. Oh father, farewell. فهذا جدي رسول الله قد سقاني بكأسه الأوفى. He offered his grieving father consolation. He said, here is my grandfather, from whose cup I have drunk. Never again will I be thirsty. Don't worry about me, father. I'm not thirsty anymore. He says that there will be a cup waiting for you. Imam Hussein rushed to him, seeing what is remaining from his son Ali. He threw himself from the horse upon his son. He put his cheeks on Ali's cheeks. على الدنيا بعدك العفا ما أجرأهم على الرحمن وعلى انتهاك حرمة الرسول. My son Ali, petty upon this world after you. How dare they intrude on God and violate the sanctity of the Prophet. Hussein sobbed aloud, drawing attention from the enemy who had not seen him cry like that. Imam Hussein then ordered the youth to come carry Ali back to the camp. The women gathered around him, weeping, crying, beating their heads. Now betrayed and helpless, Hussein began pleading for help. When his cries were heard, even the children answered his call. The turn was now for the 13-year-old Qasim ibn al-Hasan. At first, Hussein refused to give him permission, since Qasim was the orphan of his brother Hassan. But Qasim pleaded with his uncle, kissing his hands and feet, begging for his blessing. The Imam hugged Qasim and wept emotionally, and then allowed him to go. Qasim fought very bravely. When he came out, they said, did we not kill Hussein's son? Who is this young boy? He introduced himself. إن تنكروني فأنا ابن النجل الحسن سبط النبي المصطفى والمؤتمن. هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن بين أناس لا سقوا صوب المزن. If you do not know me, I am the son of Hassan, grandson of the Prophet, the chosen one. This is Hussein, who is held like a hostage. May we be sacrificed for the one who was defended by children. This is Hussein, who is held like a hostage among people who show no mercy. The young boy fought bravely, killing many of the soldiers at his tender age, until his sandal snapped as he bent down to fix it. Amr ibn Sa'd al-Azdi approached him. He struck him with his sword on his head. He cried out, "Aghithni ya Amma, oh uncle, save me." Aba Abdullah rushed to him, crying over his body and saying in a painful voice, "Azza wallah ala ammika an tad'uh fala yujibuk, أو يجيبك فلا يغيثك." It is painful that I am helpless. My nephew, you call, but I cannot respond. Or when I respond, I cannot help you. The Imam then made a dua. Allahumma ahsihim adada, wa la turdi al-wulata anhum abada. Oh Lord, do not lose count of them. Do not forgive them ever. My cousins, be patient, for you shall never see disgrace after this day. Qasim was then brought back to the tent. They put his body next to that of Ali Akbar and the other youth. When Abbas saw the death toll rising, Ya Sahib al-Amri was-Zaman, this is your uncle, Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. When he saw the death toll rising, he stood up and ordered his brothers Abdullah, Uthman and Ja'far to enter the battlefield and fight one after the other. Abbas's brothers, Hussein's brothers, the children of Ali and Baneen fought valiantly and embraced martyrdom one by one. It was now time for Abbas himself to enter the battlefield. He came to his brother Hussein seeking permission to go. Hussein could not bear to lose his brother. Tears filled his eyes. Abbas, anta hamilu liwa'i. How could you do this, ya Abbas? You are the bearer of my flag. If you go, my entire army will collapse. Remember, Hussein had no army anymore. It was just Abbas, but Abbas was his army. My entire army will collapse and my enemies will rejoice. Hussein said to him, Abbas replied, لَقَدْ سَئِمْتُ مِنْ هَؤُلَاءِ الْقَوْمِ. I am tired of these hypocrites. I cannot bear to hear the sounds of the children crying of thirst. Their sounds, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, are killing me. I wish to seek my revenge. صاحي حسين يا أخويا يا عباس يا نور العين يا تاجي على الرأس. When Hussein saw Abbas adamant to fight, he said, if you must go, then go and seek some water for the children. Abbas then mounted his horse. He took the water container and headed toward the river, cutting through the enemy lines. He was surrounded by 4,000 troops who shot at him with their arrows, but he did not fear their multitudes. The standard hoisted over his head, he started attacking them until they all fled away from the son of Ali. He managed to reach the river while overwhelmed with water. As soon as he reached the water, he took a handful to drink. The enemy were saying, if he quenches his thirst, it will be the end of us. To everyone's shock, Abbas then threw the water back into the street. فَرَمَى الْمَاءَ عَلَى الْمَاءِ. Without drinking a drop, he filled the container and walked out. No one knew why he did that. Why would Abbas refuse to drink? They then heard him whisper to himself, Ya nafsu min ba'd al-Hussein huni. وبعده لا كنت أو تكوني هذا حسين وارد المنون وتشربين بارد المعين. Abbas, you are worthless after Hussein. It makes no difference whether you live or die. Here is Hussein dying of thirst while you drink from the cool stream. Never I shall do that. Abbas couldn't drink while Hussein and the children will stir thirsty. He filled his water skin, mounted his horse again, and headed toward the camp, bent on blocking his path. The enemy troops surrounded him from every direction. Thousands attacked him all at once. They said, we need to take the water away from him. But Abbas was protecting the water with his two hands. Zayd ibn al-Ruqad and Hakim ibn al-Tufail were hiding behind a tree, waiting for Abbas to approach. Zayd struck Abbas on his right arm, cutting it off. Abbas cried out, Wallahi in qata'tumu yamini inni uhami abadayan an dini. By God, if you cut off my right hand, I will forever defend my faith. I shall protect my master, the grandson of the Holy Prophet. رحم الله من نادى وعباسا وغريبا ومظلوما. He grabbed the sword with his left arm, continuing to fight while he headed back toward the camp with the water container. Suddenly Hakim emerged from behind another tree and struck his left arm and severed it. Abbas cried out, Ya nafsu la takhshay min al-kuffari wa abshiri bi rahmatil jabbari مع النبي السيد المختار قد قطعوا ببغيهم يساري. Oh Allah, they cut my left arm. He managed to grab the water skin with his teeth. Staying without his two arms, he headed toward the camp, but they did not give him a chance. They showered him with their arrows. One pierced the container, spilling the water. Another arrow pierced through his chest. Another arrow struck his eye. وعباسا فوقف العباس متحيرا. All the maqatil say Abbas suddenly stopped. He was bewildered. He didn't know what to do. How could he? He had no hands to fight with, no eye to see with, no water to take back to Sakina and Ruqayya. Abbas lost all hope. He simply stood there. As he stood in despair, some ulama have said, when Abbas was struck with the iron rod, he was wearing a helmet. What happened to him? How did the rod reach his head? They say because Abbas was trying to pull the arrow out of his eye. How do you pull out an arrow without your hand? So he lowered his head so he could pull it with his legs. As he lowered the head, the helmet fell down. That's when a man came from behind and struck his head with an iron pole. Aywa Abbas! Abbas then fell to the ground. When a person falls, they shield the fall with their hands. Without hands, he fell face first. As he fell to the ground, he called out, Akhi adrik akhak. Brother, come to your brother. Abdullah rushed to him, causing the enemy to flee. Imam Hussein said, Ila ayn tafirrun wa qad qataltum akhi. Where do you flee when you have killed my brother? When Hussein approached him, he first saw the water skin, then the standard lying on the ground. Then he saw the two arms of Abbas scattered on the battlefield. Abbas lied on the sand, an arrow planted deep in his eye, another in his chest. Imam Hussein cried out, Akhi Abul Fadl, Al-Emaan inkasara dhahri, wa qallat hilati, wa shamut bi aduwi. Now my enemies have rejoiced, O Abbas. Now my back is broken. أخي من للعيال بعدك من للفواطم بعدك. Who will protect the women and the children? Hussein then went back to the camp all alone, heartbroken, sorrowful, hopeless, wiping and weeping his tears with his shirt sleeve. Sakina approached and asked him about her uncle. Zainab said, where is our brother Abbas? Hussein didn't say a word. He simply headed towards Abbas's tent. He removed the pillar of the tent, leaving it to fall down, meaning that Abbas was martyred. Zainab screamed, Wa akha, wa Abbasa, wa dayatana ba'dak. We are lost after you, O Abbas. So Hussein echoed the same statement. He said, yes, wa dayatana ba'dak. We are lost after you. After the death of Abbas, Imam Hussein was left without supporters. He looked around and saw nothing but dead bodies around him. He kept shouting, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. Is there no one to help us? Is there no one to protect us? Before Imam Hussein said his last farewell, he asked his sister Zainab to bring him his infant Abdullah, who was just 6 months old. When he saw how the child was dying of thirst, Hussein took his child and headed towards the enemy and said to them, يا قوم لقد قتلتم إخوتي وأولادي وأنصاري وما بقي غير هذا الطفل وقد جف اللبن من ثدي أمه إن لم ترحموني فارحموا هذا الطفل فإنه يتلظى عطشا وليس له ذنب فأسقوه شربة من الماء. O people, you have killed my brothers, my sons, and my supporters, and I have no one left but this child. The milk in his mother's breast has dried up. If you show no mercy to me, then have mercy on him, for he is dying of thirst. He has committed no crime, so give him a drink of water. The enemy was split. A few said, this is but an infant, let us quench his thirst. Others said, لا تبقوا لأهل هذا البيت من باقية. Do not spare any member of this household. Don't let any of them survive. Some of them even said, إن كان للرجال ذنب فما ذنب هذا الرضيع. If the men have committed a crime, what crime has this suckling infant committed? Fearing dissent and insurrection in his camp, Umar sought the help of his lead archer, Harmalah ibn Kahil al-Asadi. Whenever the Ahlul Bayt would hear the name of Harmala, they would cry. They would remember Abdullah al-Radi'. Umar said to Harmala, اقطع نزاع القوم, put an end to their dispute. Harmala knew what his commander was asking of him. He immediately took an arrow, he put it in the bow, and he shot the infant with a long arrow which had a poison tip, an arrow designed to hunt desert beasts and animals. The child's neck was too delicate for this arrow. It severed the head from the jugular vein to the jugular vein. رحم الله من نادى وحسينا وعليا ومحمدا. The infant fluttered for a moment in his father's hands, the blood gushing from his tiny vein before wilting and freezing as Hussein looked on to his infant child. While crying and in shock, Hussein said, هَوَّنَ مَا نَزَلَ بِي أَنَّهُ بِعَيْنِ اللَّهِ. What makes this bearable is Allah is watching this. It is in the sight of God. The father then scooped the blood of his son. Hussein threw the child's blood towards the sky, saying, Ilahi in kana hadha yurdik فَخُذْ حَتَّى تَرْضَى. O Lord, if this pleases you, then take until you are pleased. He cried in submission. Imam al-Baqir says, not a drop of that blood came back to the ground. Hussein then took the slaughtered child back to the camp. Zainab came to welcome her nephew, only to see the child in Hussein's arm with his throat slashed. Hussein then went behind the tent, his clothes drenched with the blood of his thirsty boy. He dug a small grave with the tip of his sword. He then buried him in his blood-soaked garment. Imam al-Zaman describes this. He says, As-salamu ala Abdullah al-Radi' al-Murmal Sari' المتشحط دمه والمصعد بدمه إلى السماء المذبوح بالسهم في حجر أبيه. Peace be upon Abdullah the infant, the one who was left for dead, fluttering in his blood, raised to the heaven, the one slaughtered with the arrow in his father's arms. May Allah curse Harmala who shot him. The Imam was now all alone. He had no choice but to charge at the enemy by himself. He is described as such. Kana ayisan min al-hayat. He had lost all hope in life. He attacked the right flank while saying, Al-Maut awla min rukub al-'ari, wal-'aru awla min dukhul al-nari. Death is better than being humiliated, and being humiliated is better than entering the hellfire. He attacked the left flank while saying, Ana al-Hussein ibn Ali, alayt an la anthani, أحمي عيالات أبي أمضي على دين النبي. I am Hussein, son of Ali. I vow not to bow down. I am defending my family. I follow the religion of my grandfather. Abdullah ibn Ammar says, I have never seen a bereaved and grief-stricken man who has witnessed the murder of all of his children and companions, bearing the sorrow of all calamities, yet is more steadfast, brave and courageous like Hussein. so much so that no one dared stand in his way. Hussein challenged the enemy to come and fight with him. Whoever came forward to confront him was sent to hell by Hussein's sword. Many of them were left dead. So Umar ibn Sa'd rallied his troops, saying to them, attack him from all directions. احملوا عليه من كل جانب رحم الله من نادى وحسينا. Attack him from all directions. Thousands of enemy troops launched collective attacks against Abdullah. He responded to all of them, such that they fled from him like a flock of goats fleeing from a wolf. Having failed, the enemy decided another strategy. The archers then shot 4,000 arrows towards Abdullah. He was prevented from reaching his women and children. Hussein shouted, woe unto you, O followers of Abu Sufyan! If you have no religion and do not fear the afterlife, then at least be free and noble in this world. And if you are Arabs, then return to your race. Shimr yelled, O son of Fatima, what are you saying? Hussein replied, I say, I am fighting you and you are fighting me. It is no fault of the women. So until I'm alive, keep your people away from my family. Shimr said, we will give you that, and ordered the troops to focus their attack on Hussein alone. He returned to his camp one last time. He then made his final farewell, calling out, Ya Sakina, Ya Rubab, Ya Zainab, Ya Kulthum, Hada akhirul wada'. This is the last farewell. May peace be upon you. The women gathered around him and started wailing and sobbing aloud. We shall meet in paradise. Be patient after my death. You have many tragedies awaiting you. Then he asked for his horse. Zainab brought him his horse. He mounted it. As he was about to leave, he heard a faint voice calling from behind, Mahlan, Mahla, Ya ibn Zahra. Slow down, O son of Zahra. He looked back. It was his sister Zainab. She asked him to get off from the back of his horse. Zainab has one more thing to do. Zainab embraced her brother. She then asked to kiss his throat and his chest. Zainab had done what her mother Fatima had asked her to do. Our mother Fatima, I did as you told me. I have fulfilled your request. As you were lying on your deathbed, you wanted to kiss the throat of Hussein on this day. But because you're not here in Karbala, I did it for you. The Imam then proceeded to the battlefield. He confronted an army of 30,000 while all alone. He looked right and left searching for helpers, only to find his companions slain like sacrificial lambs. He called out to them one by one, Ya Muslim ibn Aqil, Ya Hani ibn Urwa, Ya Habib ibn Mudahir. يا مسلم ابن عوسجة، يا خضير، يا برير، يا زهير. None of them answered his call. Imam al-Baqir says the bodies of the shuhada began shaking. Had they had a trace of life left in them, they would never abandon Abu Abdullah. فنادى يا أبطال الصفا ويا فرسان الهيجة. O heroes of the battlefield, O knights of warfare, Mali unadikum fala tujibun. I call unto you, but you do not answer. Are you asleep? I beseech you to wake up. Why does Abu Abdullah call them? He says, هذه نساء الرسول لفقدكم قد علاهن النحول. These are the women of Rasulullah. They have been bereaved for your loss. Rise, O noble ones, and protect them. When the children and women heard this, they cried and wailed. So he repeated his plea. هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنصُرُنَا. Is there no protector who can defend the sanctity of Rasulullah? Is there no believer who may fear God of that which is befalling us? The intense crying of the women and children reached a new peak. Hussein's eldest son Sajjad, who was ill, he saw his father covered with the blood of Abbas, Qasim, Zuhair, Muslim, Habib, and even the 6-month-old infant. So he tried to stand up while leaning on a stick and dragging his sword. Hussein then shouted, Sister Zainab, take him back, lest the earth becomes devoid of the progeny of Muhammad. احبسيه لألا ينقطع نسل آل Muhammad. Imam al-Sajjad said, how can I not go when my father is all alone and not calling for help? Then the Imam challenged the enemy to come and fight with him. Then whoever came forward to confront him was sent to hell by Hussein's sword. One of them said, by Allah, I have never seen a man who had lost everything, yet his face was full of light. Then the enemy launched collective attacks against him. He responded to all of them. As a result of his counterattacks, they fled from him. The Imam would then return to his place and repeatedly say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-Ali al-Azim. The Imam fought continuously until the enemy separated between him and his family. Allahu Akbar. Umar ibn Sa'ad then called out. He yelled, woe unto you. Attack him while he is busy with himself. They charged at him, raining him with arrows. Hussein attacked the enemy like a roaring lion, but he received many wounds all over his body. Mostly because of the arrows. He would continuously say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-Ali al-Azim. He then asked for water. Allahu Akbar. Aywa atshana wa Husayna. He asked them for water. Shimr answered, you are not going to taste it until you enter hellfire. Another man called out, O Hussein, can you not see the water of the Euphrates flow, moving like the belly of a snake? You are not going to drink from it until you die of thirst. They refused to give him even a drink of water. فَوَقَفَ لِيَسْتَرِيحْ سَاعَةً. أيوا حسينا أجرك الله يا صاحب الأمر. when he was weakened and thirsty, he then paused to rest for a moment. As our Imam was resting, weakened by the thirst and all the wounds, and with the grief of losing his children and his brothers, suddenly a tyrant, evil, wicked man named Abu al-Hutuf hurled a rock in his direction. The rock hit his blessed forehead, causing the blood to stream down his face. Abdullah then grabbed his shirt. He lifted it to wipe the blood from his face. Now it was Harmala who came forward. ساعدك الله يا صاحب الأمر. Harmala then shot Aba Abdullah with a three-pronged arrow, which struck our Imam, piercing his chest, and it went straight through his heart. He cried out, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. He raised his head towards the sky and said, Ilahi, innaka ta'lamu annahum, oh Allah, you know that they are killing a man, that there is no one else save him, who is the grandson of a prophet. أيوا حسينا ومظلوما. He then pulled out the arrow, causing the blood to gush out of him. He took a handful of that blood and stained his beard with it, saying, هكذا ألقى والله جدي رسول الله. This is how I will meet my grandfather, the messenger of God. وَأَنَا مُخَضَّبٌ بِدَمِي. Due to the constant attacks and the bleeding and the wounds, your Imam, O Mu'mineen, Hussein then fell to the ground from the back of his horse without lifting his head. A man then approached him. He began cursing Aba Abdullah. Another man came and struck him with the sword on his head. The head was covered by a helmet. The helmet was drenched with the blood of Aba Abdullah. He took it off. He wrapped his head with a turban and said, May Allah deprive you of eating with your right hand and gather you on the day of judgment with the oppressors. Your Imam was now covered with blood. Abdullah, the son of Imam al-Hassan, was only 10 years old. He saw his uncle surrounded by his enemies. Some say that his aunt Zainab was holding his hand. Abu Abdullah had told her not to leave this boy alone. How did he manage to release his hands from his aunts? How did he escape his sister Zainab? Some have said that is the moment when Zainab was looking at Abu Abdullah. She lifted her hands and put them over her head and said, لَيْتَ السَّمَاءَ أَطْبَقَتْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ. May the heavens fall onto the ground. That is possibly when Abdullah escaped his aunt. He went straight to his uncle Abu Abdullah. He hurried towards the pit where the Imam was lying. He sat in the Imam's lap, looking left and right. an enemy approached Abdullah to strike him. Abdullah had no shield, but he said, I will use my body as a shield for Abdullah. I have nothing to protect him. I have no sword, but I have my hand. The enemy approached to kill the Imam. Abdullah cried, أتقتل عمي ابن الخبيثة? O son of the wicked women, you want to kill my uncle? The boy shielded the Imam with his arm. From the stroke of the sword, his hand was cut off and began to dangle by the skin. He looked at his uncle and said, Amma qad qata'u yamini. Uncle, they severed my right hand. The Imam then said to him, be patient, for you will soon join your father. Another man then came and shot the boy at close range with his arrow. He killed him in his uncle's lap. رحم الله من نادى وحسينا. وبقي الحسين مطروحا على الأرض مليا. Hussein was now fatally wounded. He was left lying for some time. What prevented the enemy from finishing him off sooner was that every tribe was relying on the other to do so. Shimr yelled, why are you standing like this? The man is critically wounded. Attack him from every angle. Ya sahib al-zaman, Ya sahib al-aza, ajarak Allah. One man says, I was standing next to Hussein as he was on the brink of dying. By Allah, I never saw a man getting killed, soaked in his blood, in a better state than Hussein. His face was luminous. I was so overwhelmed by the radiance of his face that I refrained from contemplating killing him. He then asked for water. They did not give him any to drink. One man says, I came to kill him. He looked me in the eyes. His eyes were exactly like the eyes of Rasulullah. The Imam said to them, وَحَقْ جَدِّي أَنَا عَطْشَانٍ. By my grandfather, I am thirsty. One from amongst the crowd said to him, you are not drinking any water until you enter the hellfire and drink from its boiling water. The Imam replied, I shall enter unto my grandfather Rasulullah and stay with him in the seat of honor with the most powerful king. Allahu Akbar. I will complain to my grandfather of that which you have done to me, and I will tell him that I was killed by such and such. Now Umar ibn Sa'd came with a group of soldiers and approached Abdullah when he was at the point of death. Ya mu'mineen, ajarakumullah. فحملوا عليه من كل جانب. Imam al-Sadiq says 30,000 descended onto the son of Zahra. A group approached him with their swords. فرقة بالسيوف وفرقة بالرماح. A group with their spears, and those who had no weapons. وفرقة بالحجارة. They use rocks. Allahu Akbar. Every stab, the Imam says, every stab came onto another stab wound. Every strike landed on another strike wound. Zar'at ibn Shurayk came, he struck him on his left shoulder. Hussein ibn Numayr then came and shot the Imam with an arrow in his mouth. Aywa Husseina! Another man came and hit the Imam on his shoulder. Sinan ibn Anas then lodged the spear in the area of the collarbone. These are the final moments, ya mu'mineen. Zainab called out, أيقتل أبو عبد الله وأنت تنظر يا عمر بن سعد. Hussein is getting killed while you look. تقل الشمر بالله تخلي مالي قلب بالعين اهد له يا ظالم خل اخوي حسين سوى. Zainab, the daughter of Ali and Zahra, climbed on a cliff. There were too many people, she couldn't tell what was happening. She climbed on the Tell al-Zainabi to see her brother Hussein. فوضعت عشرها على رأسها. May the heavens fall onto the ground. May the death take me from this life. What are you doing? That is the same Hussein that would sit on the Prophet's chest. That is the Hussein that would climb on the Prophet's shoulder. وَيْلَكُمْ أَمَا فِيكُمْ Muslim? Is there no Muslim among you? No one replied. At that point, Umar ibn Sa'd called onto the crowd, descend upon him, وَأَرِيحُوهُ, put him out of his misery. Shimr approached Aba Abdullah. أيوا ويلاه ومصيبته. When he came to the Imam, first he started kicking him. He then sat on the Imam's chest. He grabbed hold of his beard. He pulled out his dagger. Aywa Husseina! Hussein, Hussein, Hussein! Hussein, Hussein! Hussein, Hussein! Hussein, Hussein! Hussein, Hussein! Hussein, Hussein! Hussein, Hussein!
الوداع الوداع الوداع